Thanks for tuning in to Accelerated Startup Academy. On this episode, I wanted to talk about the humanity in the non-essential, and the interview is on deal making with Alex Pachikov. He led business development at Evernote for its first decade and is now CEO of Sunflower Labs, one of the coolest security startups in the world. He also happens to be my oldest friend. Here we go. This is episode 2. Thank you for joining. I am your host, Vitaly Golomb, author of the best-selling book by the same name, Accelerated Startup. I've advised many successful startups, accelerators, venture funds, and even some of the Fortune 100. I started as a young entrepreneur in Silicon Valley and now help fast-growing companies raise money and find exits via M&A. Accelerated Startup Academy digs deep into practical and tactical advice from some of the best subject matter experts. My goal is to help you unleash your potential by turning your ideas into products and those products into great tech companies. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to be the first to know when future episodes drop. We'll soon jump into the interview with Alex Pachikov, CEO of Sunflower Labs, about deal making, but first, let's talk about what makes us human. We are in the midst of the largest civil unrest in America in a generation. Though the direct cause is yet another police murder of a black man, much like an airplane crash, the situation spun out of control for a number of combined factors. As I record this, San Francisco Bay Area is well into week 10 of shelter in place. Some parts of the world shut down earlier, some later. In almost all regions, this has meant the same thing. Don't leave your house for anything but needs deemed essential, such as grocery, healthcare, banks, gas stations, and a few other categories that comprise the basic backbone of our modern society. Though in comparison to being displaced by a war or major natural disaster, it seems staying home and binging Netflix is easy. It has been tremendously difficult on many people's psyche as they've lost their normal routines and their sense of purpose. For black people in America, this crisis has compounded with the normal health crisis of living black in America. It is no surprise that the pandemic has affected the black and brown communities particularly severely, both in mortality and unemployment rates. Let's talk about mental health. Entrepreneurs have made unhealthy habits of tying their sense of identity to the companies they build. But the same can be said about people who draw purpose from any number of all-engrossing professions. Bankers, lawyers, and doctors are notorious for spending far more than the average 40 hours a week working. And the privilege of being able to do so only comes after many years of singularly focused education. The creative world is not much different. As the saying goes, the only way to get to Carnegie Hall is to practice, practice, practice. Even then, most creatives don't even reach the pinnacle of making a full-time living from their craft. Who am I? Is the question teenagers have been asking themselves since the Stone Age. The pandemic has sickened millions and killed hundreds of thousands. The economic shutdowns it has caused not only devastated many financially, but forced them to rethink their entire sense of identity. The new question has become, am I essential? While most kids have dreams of one day defining themselves as astronauts or firefighters, actors or doctors, most adults find life is really defined by a series of non-sequitur life choices. A midlife crisis is essentially coming to grips with the fact that you've ended up somewhere you didn't expect, and at once feeling like you don't have enough time to achieve those dreams you once had. For minorities, this effect is measurably worse. They are simply falling out of society at an alarming rate. The historic job losses and massive shifts of work environment for those still employed result in a collective reset, the likes of which we haven't experienced since World War II. Given the real-time nature of modern society, the speed of this shift is unlike anything we've ever experienced before. As I first engrossed myself in studying the state of artificial intelligence years ago, I began to understand just how transformative and fast this particular industrial revolution will be. It scared me. Society is focused on petty arguments while the metaphorical frog is boiling. Alarm bells are not being heard while statistics show us that we are just a decade away from the optimistic case of just 15% of our workforce having to retrain entirely. Sure, new technology will provide new opportunities we can't even imagine now, but empirically the transition is too fast to prevent those who cannot retrain from suffering severe economic consequences, especially since the cost of college tuition has more than doubled in the last 30 years. Andrew Yang brought this issue issue into the mainstream of American politics and successfully simplified the message for the masses. Never mind the inequities, given the economic shifts on the horizon, it became even clearer that our system is not sustainable for the majority of the population. The first and second industrial revolutions unfolded over the course of 3 generations. The AI revolution is happening at the blinding speed of 1 generation. The pandemic is compressing this to nearly instantaneous. As companies are coming back from the pandemic shutdown lows, they're finding they can't generate the same level of business with fewer people. In fact, a May 5th, 2020 study by Becker-Friedman Institute at the University of Chicago projects that 42% of the 30 million plus American jobs lost since March will be permanent. In retrospect, it is not difficult to guess why investors drove the stock market to such a fast recovery. Tech giants are consolidating their gains, others are reducing costs and finding more efficiency in operations, while many who have been buying back shares instead of fortifying their balance sheets are expecting gracious government rescue packages. Most of this at the cost of taxpayers and municipal budgets who are in dire need of support and will not get it. The inequities are being accelerated in mere months before our eyes. As countries are continuing to come out of hibernation and people begin to rebuild, I fear many will continue to self-identify as non-essential. In the past week, calls to suicide hotlines have increased 800%. Suicide rates have increased with every past economic downturn. 2020 may very well set a record. The civil unrest is bound to have unpredictable effects. Hopefully, at least some of them are positive. So where do we go from here? If we look at past philosophical musings on the positive effects of the AI revolution, we can expect a renaissance in creativity as people free up their time for menial tasks. However, the future of unlimited free time seems to be here for many, and we are not nearly ready for it. Andrew Yang was proven right much faster than he expected, even faster than Mike Judge, who wrote and directed the film Idiocracy in 2006. Coincidentally, what makes us human is the fundamentally non-essential. Taking care of chores is not what inspires us and makes us want to jump out of bed in the morning. It is music, movies, sports, traveling, tasty food, entrepreneurship, competition, learning, and new experiences. Humanity is creativity. I can't say we are headed into uncharted territory because we are already swimming in it. The siren songs of escapist entertainment can only keep the masses calm for so long. We need to make immediate changes to support a large group of people who have suddenly fallen out of the workforce. Not someday, not in 10 years, now. We no longer have the choice or the luxury of procrastinating the development of that support system. Automation and the irrelevance of numerous labor categories that come with it is inevitable. To avoid complete societal breakdown, we must rebuild with a sober look at the future, not the past. We have an opportunity to do it right and build a foundation to support a whole new societal structure that is at once more inclusive. One that provides the necessary safety nets for people to focus their energy on creative pursuits that truly make us human. Alex and I have known each other since we were kids. We worked on many things together, even started some companies. We fought over a girl as teenagers. We argued about Tesla now. I have a huge amount of admiration and respect for Alex's thoughtfulness in the tech world, which is why I asked him to share some of his experiences with you today. These days, he's a specialist in emerging trends in robotics and security industries. He is the CEO of Sunflower Labs, a drone-based home security startup he co-founded in 2016. Before assuming the role, Alex was a member of the founding team of Evernote and held position as VP of Partnerships, Business Development, and Developer Relations. He brings decades of experience in technology evangelism with the goal of promoting partnerships and integration for complementary products and services. Here is our discussion on getting deals done. Welcome to Accelerate Startup Academy. So let's dive right in. As a person that's been around for a little while in the startup world and has closed a number of deals and traveled the world doing so with a number of different projects, both in software and hardware, I'm hoping you can share lots of insights today with our audience. Let's start with, how do you organize your time and process for business development?
You probably first want to kind of have your goals. So you organize your time based on what you're trying to achieve. The business development could take different forms. Business development could be essentially a form of sales where your company has something, and business development is a more high-touch version of sales, maybe with an integration or customization angle or something like that. In which case, that's one route that you would take. Or business development could be essentially what's called the strategic business development, where you're looking for partnerships and for kind of win-win situations. And these would be more opportunistic. These would be kind of things that you would need to network more for, kind of have a connection until one day maybe something pops up or something works out, and you would pursue that as a deal. So there's two sides to it. The side that I practiced the most was the more strategic aspect of it. So I've done a lot of strategic integration deals, custom development with partners, co-branding, things of that nature. And the way you would organize that is you want to have your end goal in mind. So whatever is your metric you're trying to hit, and you work backwards from that. So in the early days at Evernote, the metric that we were most interested in was new users. So new users coming into the product. And so everything in the early days was geared toward how do you put together a partnership in such a way that drives new users, right? And if you work backwards from that, everything else kind of pours out of it. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a good place to start, because for a lot of startups that are really at early stages, it's a little bit of Schrodinger startup, because you have a lot of these companies started by engineers that really don't have these soft skills or any background in sales, and they're kind of starting from scratch. So I think this will be really interesting to start digging into. So one of the things that comes up the most, what's the most effective thing you found to get people to respond to you when you're reaching out, when you're doing cold calls, or maybe you're asking for intros? What are some of the most effective ways to actually get somebody on the other side?
Short emails, 3 lines. As soon as you get a block of text, the chances of the person responding or me responding or somebody reaching out to me with a block of text diminishes by the length of the email. Because as much as it could be interesting, I might need to think, oh, I need to read it later, get into the detail of it, or, I'm on my phone, I'm just kind of scanning through it. If the email is short and essentially has one ask, I don't know, let's get on the phone, let's meet, take a look at this, that is much more actionable. So I've learned sort of the hard way from sending long, lengthy emails to people with, bullet points and paragraphs and having that ignored, to literally just 3-line email saying, hey, we want to do this with you. Click here if you want to take a look at what our product is. And that to me has always been a much better return.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's one of the things that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake, especially again with an engineering background. They want to be very thorough and almost over communicate the information just by bad habit, so to say, when they don't realize that there's just one goal: is get somebody on the phone and have an opportunity to build that relationship. Now, speaking of that, early days, again, you have to choose your battles, right? So how do you stay focused on the right opportunities, but also don't let go of things that you think are going to be interesting in the future and relevant, and kind of put them on the back burner? How do you kind of manage that communication, and how do you maintain those relationships over some period of time?
I'm not a big believer in maintaining the relationship over a long time. I actually get quite annoyed with people who are just meet for lunch and they kind of get nothing. They just want to stay up to date. Everyone's busy. So if you've made a connection to somebody, if you've had a good relationship in the past, maybe you've done a deal together, maybe you work together, oftentimes reconnecting even years later is the same. It's like, I haven't seen some of my old friends for 5 years, 10 years. And, when I see them, we pick up where we left off. So like almost as a courtesy to the people that I work with, I don't go out and just bug them randomly. But every once in a while, if maybe something particularly interesting that's happening that you want to share, I would typically rely more on social media to do that. So posting something on LinkedIn for your professional network, or on Facebook, if that's where your network is. That occasional touch, where people just maybe see something and they like it, that's enough to freshen the memory of, who the hell you are. So then when you do reconnect with this person, like, oh yeah, it's that one guy.
That's good insight. I think everybody has their own style, and it's always kind of a little bit of panic mode when people try to be very, very thorough and complete again, and they get a little bit anxious when they have to prioritize who they communicate with. Now, with this function largely being sales and business development, there's certainly an element of marketing support and building a brand and kind of building that trust. What can you share about kind of the importance of building that brand and investing in that? If you had to choose early on where you put your resources, time, money, how would you kind of manage the whole process of putting in that support on the marketing side to help deals get closed?
You want to have So it kind of depends on your situation. So if your boss who put you up to doing this business development wants you to succeed, there absolutely needs to be a support network behind you. Give you an idea, if you're doing, and I'm not sure if anybody's doing this anymore, but we did a lot of pre-install deals at Evernote, with Samsung, with Sony, with HTC, and so forth. The pre-install deals typically go hand in hand with some engineering work. So you might have a custom integration, there's a widget or a button that needs to be placed on the phone, and it usually goes hand in hand with testing. So if you give somebody a build to pre-install, they're going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and find all sorts of bugs for it. So if you are just a business development guy, there's nothing you can really do. Like, you're not going to improve the app. The deal's going to fall apart literally at the worst possible moment, after you already have the deal, when you're delivering stuff, and when they just don't accept it. And we've literally had this happen where we're supposed to be pre-installed on Galaxy S3 or something like that, and the week before their image freezes, they discover some small issue, and we're not able to fix it in time, and so you get dropped from the image which goes onto that phone. So stuff like that is awful because you've put in so much effort into it. But when we did deals, I've always had at least one engineer. This is mostly on Android side, so with an Android engineer who can jump on things really quickly. And I always had a designer, because any of the benefit of the partnership is going to come with the materials that come with it. Just being pre-installed is of marginal value, but being promoted, having some flyers in there, having some other marketing material, email campaigns which will go along with it, all of these things will require support from your marketing team, your design team, and of course your engineering team.
Yeah, that's great. That's very helpful. I think having that support network around you really is key to getting these deals closed and across the finish line. Nothing's more frustrating than spending all that time just for it to fall apart in a way that you can't control. Obviously, startups primarily are doing deals with companies bigger than them, and the bigger the company, the slower they move. That's a very common situation, and just the time scale is different between large companies, corporates, and startups, and we've been on both sides. How do you deal with that? How do you motivate and how do you move that deal along without being annoying or sounding desperate with these corporate counterparts on the other side of it when their timing is very, very slow? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I don't necessarily think it's slow. It's slow and then it's fast, right? So the deal is going to be done not based on what I want, but based on what the partner is going to want, in conjunction with what we can deliver. So I might want the deal really badly, but if it's no use to them, there's no motivator for them to be able to get this deal done immediately, then it's going to be one of these things where they kind of keep pushing it out. Generally, there was a moment in a discussion that you would feel you have to live kind of vicariously through them. Like, what is it that they're trying to accomplish? Why are they even talking to you, right? And in some of the cases that we've done in the partnership we've done before, we were bringing value. So they're going to ship a product. They want to increase the perceived value of the product. In this case, they included Evernote Premium or something like that. And that is a way for them to show that this $200 device has an additional $50 or whatever of value on it. And typically they have a deadline too, right? This device is going to be shipping. These materials need to be sealed in. So what often happens is it's slow, you're not sure, and then they agree, and then suddenly it's fast, right? They need everything done. They need everything yesterday, and that's too late for you to deliver it. So I would say my issue wasn't that when the deals were slow. My issues were more when the deals got really, really fast.
I got you. So that's a little counterintuitive as well. Yeah, I see a lot of frustration, and obviously startups, they think, again, when they're just starting out and dealing with large companies for the first time, they think that everything should be moving as fast as startups make decisions. But unfortunately, that's not so.
Hold on, but from the moment that something like Samsung locks down, they're going to decide, okay, they're going to ship this phone. They're going to ship it on this particular day because they're going to announce it at MWC. Back in the before, we had things like that. It's not going to be a problem.
That's not a problem anymore.
This is just like a bygone era. But they're going to decide, they're going to announce this phone February, whatever. That basically means it's locked in December, maybe even earlier, right? So when you do this deal and they tell you that you're going to be part of it, then their speed is going to blow you away. Because they're a machine where thousands of people are freaking out, and they're going to ship this on time, and their heads are going to roll, right? And you actually, as a startup, you have much less risk. Okay, you don't ship in this phone, you ship in the other one, right? So believe me when I say that it's when that table flips, that flip side is actually much more frustrating.
That's really interesting. And so how do you deal, a lot of these deals these days, everything's pretty much global. How do you deal with the cultural, the language differences, and that aspect of it when, the deals are highly personal, right? So you need to understand the person. And I've seen a lot of people that get really frustrated because they don't understand the other culture, or the deal just breaks apart just for simple reason of misunderstandings. You've been successful for many years dealing with Asian partners, European partners, etc. What are some of the things you've seen? What worked for you? What didn't work for you?
Every culture is going to be a little bit different, and the way you're going to do those deals and the way those deals actually get approved is different. So we've done a lot of business in Japan. I've been to Japan 35 times during the course of my career doing this, and the reason I was there so much is because so much more is done in person. If you're sitting across the table for 3-4 hours, you can get everything sorted as opposed to having conference calls. So I know that that's not a possibility, at least in the near future, to do face-to-face deals. But man, there were just situations when you've had 3 calls, there's 10 people on the call, and nobody knows what the hell is going on. Nobody understands it. And then I just got on the plane, and I've flown to Japan for one day. I've literally got on the plane in the evening, landed in Japan, spent the night, the next day, full day of meetings. At the end of the day, go to the airport, and I'm back here. Only when I did that where I could feel a breakthrough. Whereas you can have endless number of conference calls scheduled or standing meetings or whatever you might have, and just nothing will move. But then if you send them a note, say, hey, I'm flying out, I'll be there tomorrow, then suddenly all of the stuff lights up, right? And everybody, they don't want to waste your time flying out there. And of course, they're going to get all these things done. So a lot of that, a lot of in person has helped me a lot. And then one other aspect about in Japan in particular is that oftentimes the deals in big companies are consensus driven. So if there's 10, senior executives who are going to approve your deal, and one of those isn't, he's not saying no, but he's saying maybe, or he has a question, essentially it's a no. Everybody says no, right? So what I often spend time is trying to chase down, who is the blocker? And maybe not just who, but what is the particular concern that they're worried about, and address that concern. Because, it's easy, again, to waste your time. But if there's one particular concern, and oftentimes it's something like privacy or something like that, then you have to figure out exactly what is stopping the deal with that one explicit thing the best that you can to push it through.
Yeah, that's great. You actually covered partially one of my other questions, which was, now we're in a new reality, right? Before, salespeople would get on a plane and go somewhere for a day. I've done it also, just go somewhere, fly for 12 hours each direction just to have a 1-hour meeting, because that 1-hour meeting will get things done. Let's break this question into 2 parts. So before, when did you know that it was time to go and build that personal relationship and get on a plane and talk to somebody, versus kind of warm it up via phone calls and conferences? And then now, what do you think, with the new reality we're all in for the foreseeable future, how do you think that's going to change?
Well, it's going to change in the sense that, even if you're having a meeting with somebody next door, you're probably doing it over Zoom. As much as, I think things will start to unfreeze, and, the world will sort of start coming back to normal, I feel that business travel and some of these things are still going to be seen as kind of non-essential, right? So I don't anticipate, at least this year, having much face-to-face, business, maybe a little bit, but definitely not like it used to be. I mean, I've last year I was on the plane for 200 days, so that there's no way that's happening in my foreseeable future. So we have to make do with what we can. So I think it's going to be a lot of video conference calls. I think it's going to be a lot of presentations, webinars, things of that nature. We have to get good at it. We have to find tools. We have to develop tools. Lots of companies, of course, working on that. They'll make that situation better. I've seen a bunch of really cool new stuff which is coming out to make remote meetings and remote presentations better. So I have some hope that technology will ultimately resolve this. And it's just kind of a shift, right? This shift in mentality and perception and how you are going to be doing these calls in order for them to be more effective. So, but yeah, I don't think this is a matter of just wait it out for a couple of months and get back to normal. If anything, normal comes back really, really slowly over a long time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to take some time. It's going to be interesting. Maybe we'll have to find a way to adjust, and people will just have to get much better at remote meetings and trying to understand each other and strike a balance and get a deal done. We'll be right back for the rest of the interview. I've had the opportunity to meet and train entrepreneurs in over 30 countries. I found that they're all pretty much the same: tireless, driven, irrationally optimistic. They may have different accents, but the challenges are always the same. And I wanted to make all of these secrets of Silicon Valley success available to anyone. Accelerated Startup is my blueprint for you to go from idea to product to company the next time you want to change the world. Make no mistake about it, if you're working on a problem worth solving, by definition, no one has ever done exactly what you're about to do. This book is filled with practical advice that comes from years of blood, sweat, and tears in the entrepreneurial trenches. Accelerators and business schools use it as a textbook. Thousands of entrepreneurs have used it as their guiding light to get past the challenges faster. So you want my advice? Grab your ebook, hardcover, paperback, or audiobook version on Amazon or iBooks today, and then send me an email with your questions at asa@golomb.net. Let's shift gears a little, heading towards the finish line. What are some of the most important deal points you focus on? I mean, let's try to generalize a little bit. You've done software distribution deals, you're doing hardware now. What are some of the general key terms that you're looking for when you're working with partners or vendors or anybody that'll be doing distribution for you?
There's a thing that I kind of call the raisin. It's a little bit hard to explain. It makes more sense in Russian. So it's like there is a deal always just has this raisin, right? It's like the one thing that would find that is kind of stands out from all the dough around it. That comes back to what I said in the beginning. It's like, why is the partner doing a deal with you? Like what is in it for them? Like what are they sort of digging out of it? And typically deals can have a lot of milestones and so forth. And it's not atypical for how business development people sort of plan out like all sorts of renewals. None of that matters. It basically just like you have to figure out the true, like the one true metric that will make this deal a success, in a year. So you're going to do this deal in a year. What are you going to look at to come back and say, oh, this deal is a success, let's definitely renew it. And just focus on that specific thing. I often, to my lawyer's, dismay, like I often don't care for so many of the terms and the agreements that, yes, of course it could be really bad, but if this deal isn't working, none of this is going to come into play. Like nobody's going to care what your indemnity is if this deal is basically, nonsense or just not performing. If the deal is performing, okay, well, like then you have something to hold on to. Then you can use that particular performance metric in order to be able to extend the deal, scale it, do something else. But when you do the deal at first, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind in terms of like what will be looked back at to assess this deal as a success. And it's not the stuff that's in the term sheets. Oftentimes the stuff in the term sheets, the stuff in the presentations, there's a lot of fluff. It's a lot of various targets and so forth. Everything could shift, but it could be something very specific. And I'll give you an idea. I've done a lot of deals with telecoms. It took me a while to figure this out, but a lot of deals with telecoms only had one metric to truly care about. It's churn. So did the population of people who took advantage of this deal or engage in this partnership churn out less or the same or more? And if you could show that this deal resulted in lower churn for the telecom, then you can renew this deal perpetually. Because the value of the deal is the value of the user, which retained user, right? Which is like $1,000 a year, for example, right? For a cell phone customer, for example. So, but if you achieved many goals, you had many views and likes and many clicks and so forth, but there is no like underlying, like again, this raisin, right? I don't know why I keep saying raisin. Like to me that means something like kind of like a treasure that you found. And then if that's the case, then you have a deal. And if it's not, then good luck.
Yeah, it's a key metric. I think that's really important, is to not get overwhelmed by all the details that people tend to focus on and over-engineer contracts and things. So on the same token, Can you share maybe some of the common landmines, the things that you've seen that kind of blew up deals and that you avoid now at all costs with your experience?
There's many lessons, for a longer form podcast, but I'll give you sort of one which I found really useful. You need to find the right strata, like the right layer of the company to deal with. If you're dealing with somebody too low, like you're dealing with some junior people, some manager or something, they typically can't get anything done, right? They need to be selling you upstream, and maybe you don't have anything better as a contact, and you have to work that angle. That's fine. Oftentimes people sort of go the opposite. The mistake that they make, they go to the top. They go to the CEO, they go to the super senior executive of big companies. Problem is, a lot of those people, like you are peanuts to them. Like they got other issues, right? And even though they might say, yeah, let's do this deal, like you still don't have the support that you need. In the kind of companies that I dealt with, and this is typically really large companies, telecoms, big OEMs, there is this sweet middle, right? Like a vice president, but not a senior vice president, or like some high-level manager or something or rather. And the reason this is a sweet spot is because these are the people that actually have the pressure on them to get something done, right? These are the people that want their career still ahead of them, right? If you're a CEO of a big Japanese company, like you're done. Like you're not really doing anything anymore. You're just trying not to fuck it up. But if you are vice president at Sony, right, you still have room to grow, and these are the people that need to execute. They need to actually deliver something. So if you find a person like that and you understand their motivation, and this person becomes your champion for the deal, that will pave the way for the deal happening. But if you get stuck too low or too high, you're going to be sending a lot of useless emails.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So let's finish it off strong. I always ask this is, what are some of the non-obvious things that come with experience that maybe I didn't ask you, but that you have a sixth sense about something coming up, and you only learned it by making the mistake many, many times yourself.
If it sounds too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. So I've gotten overexcited about things which definitely seem like they're going to be huge and, unbelievably useful to us, only to have them sort of fall on my face. Whereas things that maybe I wasn't as excited about, but over time, kind of working them worked out quite well. So as a small company, somebody comes to you and it says, HP, we did this deal with HP, and HP says, oh, they're going to put you on every one of their laptops. Okay, that sounds amazing. Well, except you might not realize that, what happens with the vast majority of those laptops is they go to businesses, and the first thing the businesses does is it wipes the image on it. And so all of your pre-installs and all of the stuff that you've accomplished, 90% of those things go out the window, and you end up not seeing any of the benefit that you're seeing, right? But in the early days, especially talking to some of their business development folks, the numbers they throw at you is like the total number of laptops they ship per year, which is, I don't know how many, 100 million, whatever, right? You know better.
Tens of millions, yes.
Tens of millions, right? Whatever, right? And you're like, oh wow, that's gonna blow my socks off, right? That's gonna be awesome. Yeah, it's probably not, right? So too good to be true. It's too good to be true.
That's a good one. Yeah, I live by that as well. Alex, thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughts. I think our audience is going to really appreciate and learn from you. And great success with your newest startup that's not so new anymore, but is finally coming out of stealth and shipping product. Thanks for checking out this episode of Accelerated Startup Academy. If you haven't yet, now is the perfect time to hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to learn more about working with me, visit golomb.net, golomb.net. Stay safe, productive, and support the people you love and those who you don't know yet but are in a position to help. See you on the next episode.